Sympathy, the act or capacity of entering into or sharing the feelings of another. Sympathy is something that's becoming rarer and rarer here in the Western world. As someone born in the States, many of us are conditioned to amass material or financial wealth, even if it's at the extent of others. The culture of capitalism places us and our families at the center of our worlds. Decisions we make are shaped to benefit us regardless of the damage caused to others. Knowing this, we hypocritically communicate the importance of taking care of others after we're satisfied. When we aren't participating in activities meant to move us forward, we often find ways to relax through consuming different forms of art. And sure, a lot of it's used to simply pass time, but eventually you'll encounter something so profound that it may shake you to your core. While there have been a handful of games that have moved me throughout the years, Stalker Heart of Chernobyl might be the first game to make me question who I am. Stalker Heart of Chernobyl, or Stalker as it will be referred to throughout this essay, isn't a perfect game, but it reminds me why I fell in love with the medium after almost 30 years. Something setting games apart from books, TV shows, comics, and movies is the level of agency present. Decisions made in the story, factions you side with, and individuals you help play a role in shaping the world. Nevertheless, the purpose of this essay isn't to praise these immersive systems. Rather, I'd like to discuss how Stalker's atmosphere and world caused me to become introspective, how it taught me a newfound level of respect, how it's made me reflect on the sins of mankind, and articulates the importance of sympathy in an ever-evolving world. Before starting this game, I implore everyone to read the manual as it sets the tone for this world. And like a lot of other Ukrainian science fiction, it begins with the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. Before diving into the world of Stalker, it's paramount to understand this disaster and the psychological, philosophical, economic, and humanitarian ramifications this event continues to have on Ukraine. Between April 25th to 26, 1986, technicians working at the Chernobyl nuclear plant attempted a poorly designed experiment resulting in a chain of explosions. These explosions coalesced, creating a large fireball destroying the reactor's lid. With the lid gone and the graphite reactor core fully exposed, radioactive material was released into the atmosphere as the partial meltdown of the core occurred. To put this disaster into perspective, this event caused 400 times more radiation than Hiroshima's atomic bomb. On April 27th, the Soviet Union forced Pripyat's 50,000 civilians to evacuate. The Soviets tried suppressing this event until a Swedish nuclear power plant reported abnormally high radiation levels to Sweden's government, prompting them to push the Soviets for answers. This fire would rage on for nearly 2 weeks as thousands of people showed signs of cancer amongst other diseases as a result of the fallout. A week later, this radiated area was deemed uninhabitable by the Soviets. This area was sectioned off from the public and is now known as the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, or just the zone. Within the zone, the Soviets designed the Chernobyl nuclear power plant sarcophagus aimed at limiting radioactive contamination of the environment by encasing the most dangerous areas to prevent any more climate issues. The Ukrainian government believes this area won't be inhabitable for another 24,000 years. Lastly, in 1995, Ukraine announced that 125,000 people had died due to the Chernobyl disaster. In parallel with the tragic loss of life, trust in the Soviet Union quickly eroded amongst Ukrainian and Russian civilians alike. Following the events of Chernobyl, Pripyat citizens faced a ton of stress, PTSD, socioeconomic stagnation, solidified fears of nuclear war, and distrust in the government and other institutions as this feeling of existential dread rapidly spread. This justified inherent skepticism shattered several generations of federal trust and created a culture focused on enduring the reality of existence. This culture of preservation bred through tragedy continues shaping the lives of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. And as someone who grew up in the States, I can't even imagine living like this. Now, to be clear, before Ukraine's ongoing conflict with Russia, Ukrainian culture wasn't just walking around depressed. Ukraine is a country rich with cultural heritage featuring tons of beautiful architecture, cathedrals, incredible food, great education, and a beautiful capital. However, the Chernobyl disaster still has lasting ramifications to this day. Although many of us can empathize with what Ukrainians went through in 1986, the overall tone of Stalker and the melancholic environments exemplify this cultural strife. The opening hour of Stalker finds you exploring radiated environments in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Now, opening hours in video games typically find players in low-stakes environments where they can learn how to play the game and then there's Stalker. I wouldn't be surprised if people died frequently in the opening hours. If you head straight east after leaving the first bunker, you can wander into a radiated zone as you slowly die to, well, radiation. As you explore other regions of the zone and find your way forward, you'll quickly realize just how many areas are uninhabitable. In addition to debriefing players on the Chernobyl disaster, Stalker's manual provides additional lore to the world. The manual details another nuclear fallout incident that has all but eviscerated civilians' institutional trust, and what's left are the ashes of mankind's mistakes. Signs of metropolitan life are gone. Schools, restaurants, apartments, factories, grocery stores, and more are absent. Instead, radiation has claimed these areas as most of them have become completely uninhabitable. Something else you'll probably realize is how quiet the zone is. Whether it's a minimalist ambient background track, the sounds of gunfire, radiated animals chasing you, or the sheer silence, the zone's uneasy, quiet nature is made deliberately apparent. After spending a few hours here, the immediate terror derived from basic survival gradually evolves into something psychologically horrifying. Stumbling upon remnants of life and what was here before the Chernobyl disaster communicates how many lives were uprooted because of it, and while the second disaster takes place in the Stalker universe, it's fair to assume GSC Game World's Stalker's developer interpretation of the zone probably mirrors the real-life Chernobyl exclusion zone. When you realize this, it's heartbreaking. Kids going to school, adults coming home from work, senior citizens who retired and live with their families were all evacuated, and this is what's left. The infrastructure bolstering life in Pripyat was deemed uninhabitable as those forced to evacuate left behind memories, trinkets, and other family heirlooms that hold sentimental value. In Stalker's universe, the zone almost serves as a time capsule, as what's left here is a more primitive state of mankind, and similar to our ancestors fearful of the elements, anomalies serve a similar role. With the Chernobyl disaster flooding the environment with excess radiation, a supernatural phenomenon called anomalies began to form. Anomalies would spread and populate the zone, making numerous areas uninhabitable. Some anomalies would release electric shocks, cause things to explode, spontaneously light things on fire, and more. Anomalies can be found just about everywhere. You're never really safe from them. Now, what's really terrifying about these aren't the sounds your PDA makes when you're near one of them or how they serve as roadblocks, no. What's terrifying is how we have to tolerate them. When players encounter something they don't like, they can simply eliminate the threat. Radiated animals, competing factions, or anything else can be gunned down and ignored. However, anomalies can't be killed. You, teammates, animals, and other NPCs have to respect anomalies and the space they occupy. Not only are these a rare use of environmental horror, but they also serve as an environmental deterrent for mankind's colonial conquest. Since our inception, we've been hell-bent on colonizing each other. Whether it's some commodity, a geopolitical move, or method of making allies, we've been slaughtering each other since the beginning of time. And in our conquest for dominance, the planet has been caught in our crossfire. This could be a reach, but the existence of anomalies, much like Shin Megami Tensei's Strange Journey Schwarzfeld, feels like something we indirectly created. While anomalies obviously don't exist, countless areas like the Fukushima Exclusion Zone, the Korean Demilitarized Zone, Syrian War Zones, and the ruins of Fallujah, to name a few, are uninhabitable because of us. It feels like these areas have been seized by the planet as a response to our actions and, similar to the radiated areas, contribute to Stalker's incredible atmosphere. Knowing this radiated area you're exploring is a byproduct of our negligence humanizes the zone in the worst way possible, and as always, we aren't the only ones impacted by our decisions. In addition to humans roaming the land, you'll stumble across a ton of radiated monsters as well. Radiated dogs, boars, rodents, and other predators are present as you struggle to survive. Bloodsuckers, Stalker's most famous enemies, are absolutely terrifying. When players wander into their domain, they'll let out a scream as they charge you. What makes them so tricky to deal with is that they can turn invisible, they deal a ton of damage, and require a lot of bullets to put down. And while these enemies are cool, I think Snorks might be the most unsettling. Snorks are enemies that show up relatively early in the game. They're radiated humans with gas masks closely mirroring animal behavior. They're highly aggressive, will lunge at you, and are very, very mobile. Snorks, to me at least, represent those who couldn't escape. As civilians were forced to evacuate in response to the disaster, it's fair to assume that some were lost during it or simply didn't want to leave their homes. Given the close resemblance snorks have to humans, I'd wager that some of these enemies are the survivors of this incident, adding another morally gray tone here. With all sense of humanity gone from their eyes as they attack you, you'll have to put them down if you want to survive. Fortunately, there are people who've survived in the zone, but rather than being driven by unity, all that's left are ideals. The zone is home to several competing factions, each with their own ideology. Stalkers, peaceful scavengers, search for valuable artifacts. Bandits roam the zone, extorting weaker stalkers and taking what they can. The military acts as an authoritarian force, preventing unauthorized entry. Duty is a militant group dedicated to destroying the zone and stopping its expansion, while Freedom takes a more laid-back approach, believing the zone's mystery should be studied and that access should be unrestricted. There are other factions as well, and while players can't necessarily join them in a traditional sense, observing NPCs and watching others align themselves in the face of Armageddon is fascinating and a little tragic. History demonstrates that humans generally band together when faced with adversity. Whether to stop the spread of something dangerous or to protect a valuable resource, we usually put our differences aside and form a united front. In the zone, however, survivors don't unite under a common cause. Instead, ideological rifts divide them, making the situation far more dire. You'd think preventing the zone's expansion would be a goal that everyone could rally behind, restoring some sense of normalcy rather than fostering a generation raised in strife and mistrust seems like the logical step forward. But then again, that's my perspective as an outsider. Cultural differences and historical trauma play a major role in decision making. Our philosophies and worldviews are shaped by our upbringing, so when a cataclysmic event like the Chernobyl disaster shocks society to its core, it's only natural that our preordained understanding of the world would begin to erode. With the context of back-to-back nuclear fallouts, life in the zone, hundreds of thousands of lives being uprooted, rising anxiety, and recurring institutional failures, players are gradually exposed to a fraction of the underlying trauma Ukrainians deal with. And sure, this game can be written off as just more science fiction, but the existential dread induced from it is very real. Ukrainian modern history can be defined as challenging to say the least. After joining the Soviet Union, enduring Stalin's Holodomor, being occupied by Nazi Germany, the Chernobyl disaster, declaring independence from the USSR, and the ongoing conflict with Russia, Ukraine has been through a lot. Much of Ukraine's modern historical strife can be attributed to government and mankind's behavior. Human behavior was responsible for the deaths of millions of Ukrainians during Stalin's famine. Human behavior influenced Nazi Germany's colonial ambitions, and human behavior and negligence were the cause of the Chernobyl disaster. Because most of these events were executed by men within federal institutions, why should we prescribe to a bureaucratic system that continues to fail us? Nevertheless, another aspect we must consider in this discussion is how history is preserved. In George Orwell's 1984, Orwell wrote, "Who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past," or simply, the winners write the history books. Western education teaches history through the lens of binary good and evil, and while there are a handful of moral rights and wrongs, a lot of nuance and historical context disappears with this worldview. Eastern Europe's perspective on history and events are vastly different than ours here in the West. From the outside looking in, it seems to be far more introspective. History appears to be engaged with the intent of understanding rather than vilifying others, and when viewing the world from this perspective, you can begin to discover a bit of the trauma Ukrainians continue to endure. Understanding you're just one person when compared to these powerful sovereign institutions, it's easy to feel powerless. Instead of feeling optimistic about the future and championing change, your mind drifts towards survival as you endure what the world throws at you. Trapped in despair, knowing your actions are superfluous, you begin to question external forces until coming to the haunting reality, you can't change anything. And if your existence is just suffering, what's the point in any of this, and do we deserve to live? As these existential thoughts flooded my mind while playing Stalker, I was confronted with one uncomfortable question: should I even enjoy this game? As I was playing Stalker, I had fun fighting the AI, sorting through loot, struggling to survive, and interacting with the world. Video games, like all entertainment, aren't meant to be fun. You shouldn't feel guilty about playing something. It was created for fun at the end of the day. However, I think there's something to be said about deriving joy in the remnants of the worst nuclear fallout in history. Exploring this world, researching history, and understanding how much physical and psychological damage this caused made me feel guilty about enjoying it. Gamifying an event responsible for creating generations of trauma didn't bode well for me. Reaching this emotional impasse and feeling guilty, I talked about it with one of my good friends who happens to be Ukrainian. Speaking of, a huge shout out to Sasha for talking me through this and providing another perspective. Without him, honestly, who knows if this video ever sees the light of day. After explaining my emotionally conflicted stance, he brilliantly reminded me why most people create art in the first place. Art is a form of expression. It can be therapeutic, articulate why people feel the way they do, spread a message, or does something else entirely. He reminded me that GSC Game World endeavored to create this game to share their experience with the world, and I completely respect that. Frankly, if it weren't for Stalker or current world events, I probably wouldn't have explored modern Ukrainian history, and I definitely wouldn't have made this video. Stalker is a game that's clearly fun to play, but it also challenges players to perceive the world through the eyes of Eastern Europeans. Similar to a lot of late 80s and 90s hip-hop, rap was created to portray the recurring struggles and institutional failures of inner-city life. Games like Stalker, Metro, and other Ukrainian media offer a bite-sized glimpse into their reality. And as someone who's very ignorant about Eastern European perspective and history, I have the utmost respect for everyone responsible for bringing this dream into reality. At the end of the day, Stalker reminds me why I fell in love with video games and started this channel in the first place. Video games are an interactive form of media. There's a level of immersion that comes with shaping the world and expressing yourself through decisions that no other mediums have. Movies, books, music, comics, and other mediums tell stories where viewers or readers have no input on the event. And while that's great, the intimate and interactive nature of video games, if you allow them to be, may teach or uncover emotions you never knew you had. Stalker, in this example, has taken me on a journey that can only be experienced when you're fully immersed as an actor in GSC's system. The immersive atmosphere, evolving world based on my decisions, and the underlying sense of dread accompanying your journey of suffering is something that will stay with me forever. While I was aware of Eastern Europe being riddled with conflict, experiencing the sins of mankind through Stalker has drastically changed my outlook on life, which, in my understanding, is the broader ethos GSC has been trying to convey. As I said earlier, the West is all about binaries like good and evil. However, the nuanced complexity of survival rooted in Eastern European culture is on full display here, and with the current state of the world, this only seems more and more relevant as time marches on. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I know this is very different than other videos that I've made in the past, but I just wanted to bring my story, I guess, or my experience that I've had while playing this game, because I think it might have been kind of unique, but also as somebody like me who is very ignorant on Eastern European history, culture, and a lot of stuff. Obviously, I'm not one of these people that's like, oh yes, I played the game, so I know everything about their culture, but it just made me very curious about why this stuff exists, right? Because somebody like me who obviously plays a lot of games from like Japan, who also plays like a lot of games from America, you can see certain cultural values and stuff kind of bleed through games and media, as you know, media is just kind of a projection of culture and life of people while making this stuff. You know, this is all obviously just my opinion. I don't know if any of the stuff is necessarily right. I don't know if I'm reading too deep into things. I don't know if it's just like, hey man, run around, just shoot some ghouls. But yeah, this is definitely one of the most like psychologically horrifying games that I've played, and it's very good, if not a borderline masterpiece that belongs up there with a lot of the other great games that came out in 2007. Be sure to follow me on Twitch if you'd like to catch the show live. As always, I record footage for these videos live, so you know, stop by, say what's up. I'd love to talk with everybody there as well. And a huge shout out to the domain dwellers for supporting my creative endeavors. All the names up here, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And consider becoming a channel member or a domain dweller as well, where you'll receive early video access, a special Discord role, access to my scripts and outlines and other tools I use to get these videos off the ground, emotes, and more perks. Yeah, I don't know if I have like a ton of questions or anything, but I really am curious to hear everybody else's journey of how they, I guess, got into Stalker, which is their favorite game to play. I have really only played Stalker Heart of Chernobyl, but I'm going to play Call of Pripyat. I think that's the name of the next one. So I'll probably play that, and then I'll probably get around to playing Stalker 2 at some point as well. And I don't know if I'll make full videos like these, unless, you know, the story's like super good or mechanically there's something that I'd like to discuss. But yeah, man, Stalker is just one of those unforgettable experiences that it's going to stick with me forever and has garnered a ton of respect out of me. Anyways, thanks again for watching. I'm gonna get out of here. Hopefully the next video won't be as long of a gap and my computer cooperates. But yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one. And thank you so much for everyone that watched this. Have a great day, evening, or night.